project, you are going to have a really tough decision. I'm like writing all my notes of all the other different presentations so I can follow up with all of them. Roseburg Center, if you're not familiar with us, we are a local domestic violence program providing services for survivors of domestic violence, adults, children, and their pets. The particular project that I'm talking about tonight is our emergency shelter. We have the capacity to be able to serve shelter at any given night, 100 adults and children. And then we have a pet shelter, so up to about 8 dogs and about 6 to 8 cats at any given time. For survivors of domestic violence, when they first come to shelter, it's all about, we want to make the best impression possible. When they come to us, either coming through our hotline or being referred from the hospital or by the police or any of our other community outreach, this is the worst, most tragic moment in their life, that they are having to escape the home, a home where it should be filled with safety and love and comfort. But for survivors, adult and child survivors of domestic violence, it's a place of terror. For those dynamics, just to know that it is, I think we're all familiar with the physical violence, but it's this ongoing cycle of adults and children experiencing coercive control from their intimate partners. It's either a current relationship, a former relationship, but it's going to be characterized by that abusive partner seeking to maintain control by frightening, terrorizing everyone in the family, hurting them, humiliating them, blaming them for the abuse that's happening. Often you're going to see injuries, and sometimes you will see those domestic violence homicides. I think that you probably can't go by any given day without hearing the headlines of a domestic violence homicide or a near homicide of both the adults and the children in the family being harmed. For us, it's all too real. What I've seen, I've been at Roseburg Center for 25 years, and the number of people needing our services and walking through our doors continues to increase. Over the summer, we historically have been receiving between 450 and 650 hotline calls a month of adults seeking services, particularly shelter services. Over the summer, that's gone anywhere from between 800 and 900 calls per month for those requests for help. In 2015, I looked at some of the stats. Out of those, over 2,500 were referrals from the police department, who on the scene of a domestic violence crime did do quick assessments, 11-question assessment called a lethality assessment, to be able to screen for those persons who are at highest risk of being killed. And we had over 2,500 of those calls in 2015. So when we have adults and children who are coming to us, we need to be able to have a space that is as emotionally and physically safe as possible. And what we've talked about is, and here's just some more stats, and this would be included in your proposal, just again to be able to show the prevalence of the number of families that are impacted by domestic violence and some of what is going to happen. We've heard tonight how many homeless women there are in our community, and when you see that half of all of those homeless women and children become homeless when they're trying to escape domestic violence. Our main purpose areas when we're thinking about serving survivors of domestic violence, one, we want to be able to keep those families safe in any means possible, and for many that means coming to our emergency shelter. We want to be able to create a safer community, and this means being able to provide outreach to many of the partners that you've heard from tonight, being out there in the courts, in the hospital systems, working with the police department, doing community education so that people know where to be able to help connect survivors with our services. And then the third component is ending that cycle of domestic violence. Really is how can we go about preventing domestic violence before it happens. So we have a pretty robust school violence prevention program. The main focus of what we are talking about, what I'm talking about tonight, is for our emergency shelter. To be able to have a space when those survivors first walk through our doors, whether it's coming to stay in our emergency shelter, or they are being referred by the police, or coming in from the hospital and seeking to get a protection order, a type of restraining order. And so we have what we call is our intake room. So physically coming into our shelter and a room that would be the first meeting place that a survivor would meet with one of our our advocates. We are serving, last year we served 422 women and children, 54 for pets who would be coming through these doors. We are also able to serve 269 survivors of domestic violence and processing those protection orders for a total of 740 hours. So typically about an average of about almost 3 hours time that survivors are going to come first meet with us in order to be able to access their services. Now, for this project, we're wanting, it's basically a makeover of our intake room. To create a space that, and I still call our current site, I still call it the new shelter, but we've been there since 2001. So that's when we put together this room, and really we were solely focused on physical safety. Since that time, we, like many other social service agencies and communities across the nation, are looking at how can we be trauma informed. Recognizing that when a person experiences trauma, especially a trauma like domestic violence, it's going to impact everything. And what we can do, we want to be able to do everything that we can do to make those survivors feel emotionally and physically safe. And so coming into this room, there are different things that we can do just in how we go about doing the physical design of that. So here's just a basic outline of what it means to be trauma informed, and this has become a key part of our strategic plan and also part of our just ongoing agency philosophy is to be trauma informed. And what we want to do for this particular room is to have it be that physical environment that as soon as a person walks through those doors, they're going to find comfort. We want to create a safe, welcoming, and respectful environment. This is maybe the first time that survivor has disclosed that they are experiencing domestic violence. And so I really want to be able to have that space that immediately when they walk in the room, that we are going to be able to go about the business of being able to create safety, to be able to create that trusting relationship with them. What we are asking in this proposal is to be able to purchase some of those items for this room. So we've learned from the experts. I've been able to partner with the National Center on Domestic Violence, Trauma, and Mental Health to find out what are some best practices in creating the physical environment. I've also worked with the Vera Institute of Justice on making sure that these spaces are not only trauma-informed, but also they're accessible for survivors with disabilities. But we've gone to survivors themselves to say, what is it, when you first walked through our doors, what made you feel safe? What were the things that made you feel emotionally safe, that gave you the confidence, the comfort, control, and confidence that this was going to be a place that you could go ahead and make that, it's a risky situation to leave domestic violence. The risk of being killed or hurt worse goes up when a survivor leaves. And so we wanted to be able to find out from them what could make that difference on their initial impression of us. And so we've been able to be able to find out what are going to be those durable furniture that would help us with prevention of things like bed bugs and things like that, but also would be something that would be comfy so that when somebody came in, thinking too that most of the domestic violence is going to happen between 6 p.m. and midnight, and so we want to be able to attend to people's basic needs, to be able to have lighting enhancements. Right now we have a harsh fluorescence, and I want to be able to have different options, again, for people depending on what they need in that moment. I want to create that safe environment for them. We've also researched the different types of materials that can help, different types of supplies that when, as a survivor is sharing some of the most intimate, scariest moments of his or her life, that these are things that can help calm, soothe, help ground, help that person who is in a very high stress situation, that I can use these different things like weighted blankets and sound machines, wall art, essence oils, all sorts of different things that we know from survivors are going to be helpful, and these monies would help purchase that. And then we have the final item is a computer upgrade. And it's like, what does this have to do with creating a safe, welcoming, and respectful environment? For those persons that are seeking those protection orders, we found those online, and those go down to the family court. Right now, along with like many other nonprofits, our computer in the intake room is pretty ancient. And so in order to be able to have that technology, we're slowed down in our therapeutic intervention because we have a computer that is just not gonna be able to keep up with us. And being able to do that, we need to be able to use it to help connect those people with community resources. And then when the room is not being used for intakes or protection orders, we use it throughout the work week for survivors to be able to go in and use that computer to be able to look for jobs, look for apartments, and all of those different things. And so that is where the funding would go. We would be able to, it would impact upwards of 600 survivors of domestic violence. Any questions?
Questions?
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.